Hi, welcome to this episode of The Daily. My name is Brendan Malone. There was an article in the news a couple of days ago. A university researcher here from New Zealand has gone back and looked at 1,400 media images of the 2014 New Zealand general election. And they've basically said that there is what this researcher is calling a structural bias present in that media coverage, because John Key, who is the Prime Minister, who's obviously running for office against the other potential candidates, was featured twice as much, more than, I think it's more than 2/3 of the images featured him, compared to 1/3 of the images featuring the leader of the opposition party. Now, and the suggestion is that there's a structural bias here, and that this is having a major impact upon the chances of other parties, I guess. What's interesting to me is that I'm not convinced that that is necessarily the case. I think the images need to be put into some sort of context before you suggest that the media, I think, have failed in their duty of care here, which is really the suggestion that the media have failed to give a total balanced perspective. Now, they're not saying she's not saying it's political bias; she's calling it structural bias, but it still is effectively saying that the media have failed to give balanced coverage here. Now, I'm not convinced that that necessarily is the case at all. I think, first of all, an image needs to be seen in context with an article, because if you are featured in 2/3 more articles, but the majority of those articles about you are very negative, there's no real gain for you in that. Surely that's a gain for the opposition, not for you. So there needs to be a context in which you see the whole picture of what was being reported and what was being covered. I also think you need to put it into the context of the fact that in that particular election, 2014, the leader of the opposition, the main opposition party, was not particularly effective, and he was not particularly strong, and did not maintain a strong public persona. And so I don't know if you can blame the journalists for the fact that you've got one candidate who is really strong and drives a very slick and well-oiled media and PR machine, and the other candidate is kind of all over the place and was not doing the same thing. And I think you also need to take the context of the images. I talked before about the reporting, but you also need to see the images themselves. Are they flattering images, or are they images that are kind of not so flattering, possibly even insulting to that particular candidate who gets more coverage? And lastly, I think when you think about the particular context of the New Zealand election that happened in 2014, we had a very interesting phenomenon, and that was the issue of Kim.com, who set up a political party and made all sorts of threats and really bold promises about what he was going to do. And he directly went after John Key, who was his main target, and the National Party, and was trying to get into power. And it was the most bizarre situation that we've ever seen in New Zealand before. It was kind of like a mini sort of Donald Trump situation, where you've got this guy who is completely outside of the political realm, who has a sort of entertainment type and popular celebrity type persona, who then tries to really push his way into politics in a very strong and brash kind of way. And he directly targeted the Prime Minister. So I don't think it's unusual that the media then, in reaction to that, because this guy ran a very clever PR campaign, and he ran all sorts of big events with world experts, and he was in the media, it seemed, almost every day. And when his main target is the Prime Minister, is it really that surprising to discover that the Prime Minister is getting more focus from the mainstream media, precisely because, this phenomenon is happening in your election? So I'm not necessarily convinced, and those who know me know that I am not backward in coming forward at challenging media bias, and I think there is a lot of it. But I'm not necessarily convinced that you can really be too harsh or too critical of the media in this setting, unless you actually contextualize the fact that there are more images of one particular politician than another. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily.